Hi there, I'm Andrea Koppel, and it's Time for Coffee, the podcast where you get to hear firsthand what the jobs and careers that interest you the most are really like. Hey there, Java junkies. Welcome to another K-Cup mini episode of Time for Coffee. By the way, K-Cups come in 3 sizes, single, double, and triple shots, or roughly 1 minute, 5 minutes, or 10 minutes in length. So if you don't have time to throw back an entire caffeinated career conversation, these K-Cup mini episodes of T4C can give you a quick caffeinated fix, whether you're on the go or you only have a few minutes to binge. So grab your mug and take a chug, because it's time for a caffeinated career double shot K-Cup with my guest, Zane Homsi. So let's pivot to the other hat you wear, and that is Students Plus, the platform, the space that you co-founded recently. What is it, and why did you start it, Zane?
Sure. So Students Plus is a page on LinkedIn that was designed to do 2 things. First was to share recruiting resources with students, and the second was to share career guidance with students. So that is truly Students Plus in a nutshell. Why I did it, and I'll give you kind of like the backstory for it, is I was visiting home in Virginia in March when the University of Virginia, my alma mater, had closed campus, which was like the first time any of the coronavirus headlines like started to hit home for me personally, so early on. And so that happened, and all of a sudden I was on Instagram, I was on Facebook with like friends of mine who were still in school being like, oh my gosh, like I don't know what to do. I haven't even figured out a job thing yet. And of course, the reason I mentioned the job thing is because school and recruiting never came easy to me growing up. And so I empathize really heavily with a lot of students who might have shared that experience and now didn't have access to the career centers or clubs that helped me, for instance, get my jobs. And so I posted this video on LinkedIn that got admittedly like way more viewership than I was expecting, where I basically was like, if you're a student who has experienced recruiting hardship due to campus closures, reach out to me and I'll give you sort of my treasure trove of Google Drive templates and forms and books and whatever that helped me recruit, mostly just to try and help give like these students a leg up, because I honestly just felt really sorry that, they were dealt the hand that they were dealt. So that was that. And then, like I mentioned earlier, I've been like the benefactor of a lot of really kind strangers in my life, a lot of which have become friends. And so I texted a coworker of mine in the program named Daksh, who is just absolute rock star, crazy brilliant, great friend of mine, good partner. And we sort of joined forces to see if we could help these students at scale and help sort of students all over the place. And so we got Daksh on board. I had sort of a mentor of mine named Scott believe in me and help sort of bounce ideas off of as well. And we were kind of that core team, the 3 of us getting Students Plus stood up in its like earliest days.
Well, I absolutely love it. And it obviously resonates so much with the mission of Time for Coffee. And I just want our listeners to know that you exist. And I know you've done a bunch of AMAs with professionals in different fields. And I'm just curious, what have been your big takeaways from doing these interviews, and frankly, from your own experience as a recent college student looking for a job out of school?
Yeah, I mean, on the Students Plus front, and forgive me, I was about to refer to it as College versus COVID, which is what its original name was. But I think big takeaways are, 1, very important to sort of like tap your network. And by that, I mean, like the reason it was as successful, especially in its early days, was because I think there were some people around me and in my life that also cared. And I think being vocal about what mattered to me made it matter to them, which is what kind of got it off the ground. So tapping the network is 1. And then 2, I think like leading with values. And that sounds like super corporate speak, forgive me. But by that, I mean, it's really hard to argue with someone that says, hey, all the work I'm doing is just to help someone. I'm not looking for like any ulterior motive or anything like that. And when you lead with sort of like a compassion in that front, it was just a lot easier than I expected to get people to join sort of like the tribe of folks that were like excited about the work that we were doing.
Yeah. Zane, what advice do you have for those young listeners who may have just graduated into the middle of the coronavirus and who are struggling right now around finding a job in a field that interests them, maybe even forgetting about a field that they love or that they're passionate about that just interests them? And it could be because the companies that they wanted to work for aren't hiring now, or they just can't find any openings anywhere. What tips can you give them?
Yeah, I'm actually super glad you asked this question because I was going to post about it on LinkedIn myself. So I've got two very pointed pieces of advice. The first is be your own advocate. By that, I mean, everybody else has so much going on in their life that is consuming their minds. If they're a parent, they're worried about the kids. If they're a kid, they're worried about getting a job. Everyone's worried. And so the only way people are going to know to help you is if you raise your hand and say, hey, I need help. And it's not a dig on you. It's not your fault. It's just the circumstances that we're kind of living in right now. And the saddest thing ever is to see help go unclaimed from people that are willing to give it. So raise your hand, say something, and you'd be surprised at how many people are willing to help. So that's the first. The second is, to the best that you can, just be a sponge when it comes to skills and experiences. So maybe your highest priority might have been getting a job. But if you take a step back, maybe the reason you wanted a job was to develop some professional experience or a new skill. And chances are you can acquire that skill a number of different ways. So maybe that means volunteering. Maybe that means, getting more involved in a club. Maybe that means just reading a ton of books about a topic. And even though it might not have been what we really wanted in the beginning, for the time being, that's probably the best thing you can do, such that when the tides change, you are going to be the best professional version of yourself, such that any employer would be dying to have you.
Awesome. And P.S., this should go without saying, but I'm going to say it in light of Zane's great advice there. I am here to help you. So you can DM me, you can text me, whatever. If you need career advice, you can reach out to Zane, you can reach out to me, and obviously your network. Thanks for tuning in to this K-Cup mini episode of Time for Coffee. If you want to listen to our entire caffeinated career conversation, please check out the show notes for this episode. Thanks so much for listening to Time for Coffee, where the professionals in the jobs that most interest you always have time to grab coffee 24/7, no matter where you live. I have one quick favor to ask you. Remember to rate, review, and subscribe to Time for Coffee. Thanks so much.